Captain Jake Murphy was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started going off. He put down his cup and walked quickly to the bridge of his ship, the UES Liberty. His crew was already at their stations, looking worried. "What's going on?" Jake asked as he sat down in his captain's chair. "Sir, something big just appeared in front of us," said Lisa Park, who was in charge of communications. "It came out of nowhere. The ship is huge." Jake looked at the main screen. What he saw made him whistle softly. The alien ship was enormous, much bigger than their own vessel. It was black and sleek, covered in what looked like weapons. The ship was at least 2 kilometers long and looked like it could destroy a small planet. "Are they talking to us?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir, they're sending us a message right now," Lisa replied, her fingers moving quickly on her controls. "I'm putting it on the main screen." The screen flickered and then showed the inside of the alien ship. Standing in the center was a creature, unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was huge, standing over 3 meters tall. It had 4 arms instead of 2, and its body was covered in what looked like natural armor. Strange lights were pulsing under its skin, glowing blue and purple. The alien was wearing fancy armor that looked very expensive and important. It crossed all 4 of its arms and stared directly at the camera. When it spoke, its voice was deep and scary, like it was trying to sound as frightening as possible. "Weak beings from the 3rd planet," the alien said, making his voice sound even deeper. "I am war leader Zethkar the Unbending. I am the destroyer of worlds. I am the harvester of fear. Your weak species has traveled too far from your small homeworld. You should be afraid of the mighty HFY Empire." Jake blinked and looked around at his crew. Several of them were trying not to smile. Pilot Amy Chen put her hand over her mouth, and Navigation Officer Pete Williams was looking down at his controls, his shoulders shaking a little. "Did he just say his name is Harvester of Fear?" Amy whispered quietly. "That sounds like something from a bad movie," Pete whispered back. Jake cleared his throat and tried to look serious. "I'm sorry, could you say that title again? We want to make sure we write it down correctly in our records." The alien seemed pleased that the humans wanted to hear his scary title again. He stood up even straighter and puffed out his chest. The lights under his skin pulsed brighter. "I am Zethkar the Unbending, he who brings darkness, harvester of fear, breaker of spirits, the eternal shadow of death, master of..." Someone on the bridge made a small laughing sound. Then someone else did. Within a few seconds, half of the crew was trying very hard not to laugh out loud. Engineer Tony Rodriguez had turned his chair around completely and was covering his face with his hands. Dr. Kate Adams was looking at her tablet very carefully, but her shoulders were shaking. The alien stopped talking and stared at them. Are you laughing at me?" he asked, sounding confused. No, absolutely not," Jake said quickly, though his voice cracked a little when he spoke. "We're just very impressed by your titles. They're very creative. Please continue with what you were saying." The alien seemed to believe him and continued his speech. He raised all 4 of his arms up in the air, trying to look as scary as possible. "Your species must obey the HFY Empire, or we will destroy you completely," he said. "We have conquered 17 star systems. Our warriors are trained to fight from the day they are born. Our weapons are so powerful they can break planets into pieces." "I'm sure they can," Jake nodded, though his crew could hear that he was trying very hard not to laugh. "That sounds very frightening. We are definitely scared." "Sir," Lisa whispered quietly, "should I record this for our files?" "Yes, definitely record this," Jake whispered back. "This is amazing." The alien kept talking, not realizing that the humans were finding him funny instead of scary. "Our empire controls the space between the stars. We are the monsters that other species have nightmares about. Right now, my battleships are surrounding your tiny ship. You cannot escape from us." Science Officer Dan Moore suddenly looked up from his station. "Wait, did he say 17 star systems? That's all? We have colonies in 43 systems, and we've only been traveling in space for 60 years. "Don't interrupt the scary alien, Dan," Amy said, trying not to giggle. The alien's skin light started flashing faster. He seemed to be getting upset. "How dare you make fun of the mighty Zethkar the Unbending?" "Make fun?" Oh no, we would never do that, Jake said, wiping a tear from his eye because he had been trying so hard not to laugh. We have great respect for someone with such impressive titles. Please tell us more about how unbending you are. The alien seemed confused by this response. In all his years of conquering other species, no one had ever reacted this way. Usually, other aliens were terrified when they heard his titles and saw his impressive appearance. These humans seemed to find him amusing, rather than frightening. I don't understand, Zethkar said, his skin lights dimming a little. Other species tremble when they hear my name. They surrender immediately when they see our powerful ships. Why are you not afraid? Jake looked around at his crew, who were all trying to look serious but failing. Well, it's just that we've never met anyone who called themselves the Harvester of Fear before. It's very unique. It is a title of great honor among my people, the alien explained, sounding less confident than before. I earned it by making enemies weep in terror. What exactly did you do to earn that title? Asked Dr. Adams, who was genuinely curious. I stood very still and stared at the leader of the Zellan people while my skin lights pulsed in a threatening way, Zethkar explained proudly. There was a moment of silence, and then Tony made a snorting sound that he tried to cover with a cough. The alien was starting to realize that his usual intimidation tactics were not working on these strange humans. For the first time in centuries, someone was not afraid of the mighty Kethvar Empire. Instead, they seemed to find the whole thing entertaining. Perhaps we should discuss this situation more calmly, Jake suggested, still trying to maintain some diplomatic politeness, even though his crew was barely containing their amusement. Would you like to talk about why you're here and what you want from us? The alien looked uncertain. This was not going according to plan at all. Zethkar the Unbending tried to make himself look bigger and more frightening. He spread all four of his arms wide and made his skin lights flash in angry red colors. His voice became even deeper and more threatening. You dare to mock the great Kethvar Empire? He roared. We have destroyed civilizations that were older than your entire planet. We have made whole species extinct just by showing them our power. You should be begging for mercy right now. Captain Jake Murphy scratched his chin and looked thoughtful. Well, that does sound very impressive. But I have to ask, how exactly do you destroy civilizations? Do you actually fight them, or do you just stand there and look scary until they give up? The alien paused for a moment, seeming confused by the question. We demonstrate our superior power through displays of strength and intimidation. Most species surrender immediately when they realize they cannot win against us. So you don't actually fight? Asked pilot Amy Chen, leaning forward in her chair with interest. Fighting is unnecessary when your enemies are too frightened to resist, Zethkar explained, sounding like he was repeating something he had memorized long ago. Engineer Tony Rodriguez turned around completely in his chair. Wait, so you guys are basically really good at bluffing? Like a poker game where you convince everyone else to fold without actually showing your cards? I do not understand this poker reference, the alien said, his skin lights flickering in what might have been confusion. It's a card game where you try to trick other players into thinking you have better cards than you really do, Dr. Kate. Adams explained helpfully. You win by making them too scared to bet against you even if your cards are actually terrible. The alien's lights stopped flashing entirely. That is not an accurate comparison, he said, but he didn't sound very confident anymore. Science Officer Dan Moore was looking at his computer screen with interest. Sir, I'm reading their ship's energy signatures. It's definitely powerful, but it's not as advanced as they're trying to make it look. Most of those weapon-looking things are actually just decorative panels. Decorative? Jake asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, they're designed to look scary, but they're not real weapons. It's like putting fake guns on a car to make it look dangerous. Zethkar's skin lights were now flashing rapidly in what was clearly panic. You cannot read our technology. Your primitive sensors are not capable of understanding Kethvar engineering. Actually, our sensors are pretty good, Dan said cheerfully. And according to what I'm seeing, your ship is mostly just a big shell with engines and life support. There are some real weapons, but not nearly as many as you want us to think. Navigation Officer Pete Williams was looking at his own displays. I'm also noticing that this fleet that's supposedly surrounding us is just 5 ships and they're all staying pretty far away. If they were really planning to attack us, wouldn't they be closer? The positioning of our fleet is a tactical decision that your primitive minds cannot comprehend, Zethkar said, but his voice was getting higher and less threatening. Or maybe they're staying far away because they don't actually want to fight. Either, Amy suggested with a grin. Lisa Park, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, suddenly spoke up. Sir, I'm picking up communications between the alien ships. They're not speaking in their scary voice anymore. They sound kind of worried? Can you translate what they're saying? Jake asked. Some of it, yes. One of them just said something like, the humans are not responding correctly to the intimidation protocol. Another one said, maybe we should try the scary dance. The scary dance? Tony repeated, his eyes lighting up with amusement. Zethkar's skin was now flashing so rapidly it looked like a disco ball. Those communications are private military discussions. You should not be listening to them. You're broadcasting them on an open channel, Lisa pointed out. We're not trying to spy on you, you're just really loud. Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked closer to the screen. Zethkar, can I ask you something? When was the last time you actually had to fight someone who didn't surrender immediately? The alien was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was much quieter than before. It has been many years since we encountered resistance to our intimidation methods. How many years? Dr. Adams asked gently. 643 years, Zethkar admitted. The bridge fell silent. Everyone was staring at the alien on the screen. 600 years, Jake repeated slowly. You haven't actually fought anyone in 600 years? There has been no need. Our reputation precedes us. Species surrender when they learn of our approach. Amy leaned back in her chair. So basically, you guys have been coasting on your reputation this whole time. You're like that scary story parents tell their kids to make them behave, except you're real. We are mighty warriors, Zethkar protested, but his heart didn't seem to be in it anymore. I'm sure you were. 600 years ago, Jake said kindly. But that's a long time to go without practice. Even the best fighters get rusty if they don't keep training. Dan looked up from his computer. Sir, I'm detecting some interesting things about their ship design. It's actually pretty clever. The whole thing is designed to look as intimidating as possible while using the minimum amount of actual weapons. It's more like a mobile theater than a warship. A theater? Pete asked. Yeah, everything is designed for show. The dramatic lighting, the scary decorations, even the way the ship moves. It's all choreographed to look as frightening as possible. Tony was nodding appreciatively. That's actually kind of brilliant. Why waste resources on actual weapons when you can just scare everyone into giving up? It's like the ultimate psychological warfare. Except it only works if people don't realize it's mostly for show, Amy pointed out. Zethkar seemed to shrink down in his armor. You have discovered our methods. Now you will surely attack us while we are vulnerable. Jake looked surprised. Attack you? Why would we attack you? You haven't actually done anything to us except try to look scary. But we threatened to destroy your ship and enslave your species, the alien pointed out. Yeah, but you didn't mean it, Jake said with a shrug. You were just trying to get us to surrender without a fight. That's actually pretty reasonable, when you think about it. Fighting is messy and people get hurt. You are not angry that we attempted to deceive you. Deceive is a strong word, Dr. Adams said thoughtfully. You are more like performing. It's not really lying if everyone knows it's an act, but clearly everyone does not know it is an act, Zethkar said sadly. For 6 centuries, other species have believed our performance was real. Lisa suddenly perked up. Wait, are you saying that all those other species you conquered just gave up without even trying to fight back? They just took your word for it that you were scary? Yes, the alien admitted quietly. That's actually kind of sad, Amy said. I mean, what if they could have won if they had just tried? The aliens' lights dimmed to almost nothing. I had not considered that possibility. Jake sat back down in his chair and looked at his crew. They were all looking back at him with expressions of curiosity and sympathy. None of them looked angry or afraid anymore. "Well, Zethkar," Jake said finally, "I think we need to have a longer conversation about this whole situation. Would you like to come aboard our ship so we can talk face to face?" The alien's lights flickered with what might have been hope. "You would invite me to your vessel? Even after I threatened you?" "Sure," Jake said with a smile. "Besides, I'm really curious about this scary dance your people were talking about." 2 hours later, Zethkar the Unbending stood in the cargo bay of the human ship. He looked much less scary in person than he had on the screen. Without the dramatic lighting and camera angles, he just looked like a very tall alien wearing fancy armor that was a bit too big for him. Captain Jake Murphy and his crew were gathered around, studying their visitor with friendly curiosity. The alien kept shifting nervously from foot to foot, clearly not used to being examined so closely. "So," Jake said, breaking the awkward silence, "you mentioned something about a scary dance earlier. I have to admit we're all pretty curious about that." Zethkar's skin lights flickered weakly. "The Dance of Infinite Terror is one of our most powerful intimidation techniques. It has caused entire armies to flee in panic." "Can you show us?" asked Amy Chen, grinning widely. I am not sure that would be wise," the alien said hesitantly. "The psychological effects can be quite overwhelming for unprepared minds." Engineer Tony Rodriguez nudged Pete Williams with his elbow. "This I have got to see." "Please," Dr. Kate Adams said encouragingly. "We're very interested in your culture. This would be valuable for our scientific records." Zethkar looked around at all the eager human faces. "Very well, but do not say I did not warn you about the terrifying effects." The alien moved to the center of the cargo bay and began what could only be described as the most ridiculous dance any of the humans had ever seen. He waved his forearms in slow, supposedly menacing circles while stepping from side to side. His skin lights pulsed in patterns that were probably meant to be hypnotic, but mostly just looked like a broken Christmas tree. The dance went on for about 3 minutes. Zethkar moved with great seriousness, clearly believing he was performing something truly frightening. He made low humming sounds and occasionally let out what were supposed to be terrifying growls. When he finished, he stood in a dramatic pose with all 4 arms raised above his head, breathing heavily from the effort. The humans stared at him, in complete silence. "Well?" Zethkar asked expectantly. "Are you overwhelmed with terror?" Lisa Park was the first to crack. She made a small squeaking sound as she tried to hold back her laughter. Then Tony started chuckling. Within seconds, the entire crew was laughing so hard they could barely stand up. "I'm sorry," Jake gasped, wiping tears from his eyes. That was really something." "But you are not terrified," Zethkar observed, his skin lights dimming with disappointment. "It was very energetic," Amy managed to say between giggles. "Very interpretive." The alien slumped down, looking defeated. "I do not understand. The Dance of Infinite Terror has never failed before. The Trilaxian Emperor fainted when he saw it. The Vorthak Supreme Council surrendered their entire planet after witnessing just the first 30 seconds. Maybe they had different cultural backgrounds," Dr. Adams suggested gently. "What might be scary to one species could be entertaining to another. Or maybe," Dan Moore said thoughtfully, "they were just as confused as we are, but they were too polite to laugh." Zethkar sat down heavily on a cargo container. "You may be correct. In 6 centuries of conquest, no species has ever questioned our methods or asked us to explain our intimidation techniques. They simply surrendered and accepted our rule." "What do you actually do when you rule a planet?" Pete asked. "I mean, after they surrender, what happens next?" "We establish a Kethvar administrative center and begin the process of cultural integration," the alien explained. "Which means what exactly?" Jake prompted. "We teach them about Kethvar customs and traditions. We share our knowledge of art, science, and philosophy. We help them improve their technology and medicine. We establish trade relationships and cultural exchange programs." The humans all looked at each other with surprise. "Wait," Tony said slowly. "You actually help the planets you conquer? You make their lives better? Of course, Zethkar replied, looking puzzled. What would be the point of ruling species that are unhappy and rebellious? It is much more efficient to improve their circumstances, so they want to remain part of our empire. So you're not actually evil conquerors, Amy realized. You're more, like, aggressive social workers? I do not know what social workers are, the alien admitted. People who help others improve their lives, Dr. Adams explained. They work with families and communities to solve problems and make things better. Zethkar's lights brightened slightly. That does sound similar to our administrative methods. Jake sat down on another cargo container, facing the alien. Zethkar, can I ask you something? Why do you bother with all the scary stuff if you're just going to help people anyway? Why not just approach them peacefully and offer to share your knowledge? The alien was quiet for a long moment. That is how our ancestors originally explored space. They made peaceful contact with other species and offered friendship and cooperation. What happened? Lisa asked. They were often attacked, or taken advantage of by more aggressive species. Many Kethavar died in those early encounters. Our leaders decided that it would be safer to appear threatening, so that other species would not consider us easy targets. But then you discovered that being scary was actually more effective than being friendly, Dan observed. Yes. Species that were afraid of us never tried to attack us. They accepted our rule without resistance. It seemed like the perfect solution. Except now you're stuck pretending to be something you're not, Pete pointed out. Zethkar nodded sadly. For 600 years we have maintained this deception. Our own people have begun to believe that we truly are the terrifying conquerors we pretend to be. Many young Kethavar know nothing of our peaceful origins. That's actually really sad, Amy said softly. You've been acting scary for so long that you've forgotten how to be yourselves. The alien looked up at her with interest. You feel sympathy for us? Even after we threatened to destroy your ship? Well, yeah, Jake said with a shrug. You were just trying to protect yourselves and help other people, even if you went about it in a weird way. That's not evil. That's just misguided. Besides, Tony added, your scary act is pretty harmless. Nobody actually gets hurt. You just put on a show and then make everyone's lives better afterward. There are worse ways to run an empire. Zethkar's skin lights began pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm that seemed much more natural than his earlier frantic flashing. You truly do not fear us? Not even a little bit, Jake confirmed. But we do respect what you're trying to accomplish. Helping other species develop and improve their lives is a good thing, even if your methods are a bit theatrical. What would you suggest we do? The alien asked hopefully. How can we continue our mission without relying on intimidation? Jake smiled. Well, that's something we should probably discuss with your whole crew, and maybe the leaders of your empire. This seems like the kind of decision that affects a lot of people. You would be willing to help us? Zethkar asked, his lights brightening with excitement. Sure, Jake said. After all, we're both trying to make the galaxy a better place. We should be working together, not trying to scare each other. For the first time since they had met him, Zethkar the Unbending looked genuinely happy. 6 months later, Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of a very different kind of ship. The UES Friendship was a joint project between humans and the Kethavar, designed specifically for peaceful first contact missions. The ship was painted in bright, welcoming colors instead of the threatening black that the Kethavar had always used before. Captain, we're approaching the Zelen system, reported Amy Chen from the pilot's station. They should be receiving our peaceful greeting message right about now. Good, Jake replied. How are our Kethavar partners doing? Ambassador Zethkar is in conference room 2 with the cultural exchange team, said Lisa Park. He's practicing his new introduction speech. Jake smiled. A lot had changed since that first meeting in the cargo bay. After weeks of discussions, the Kethavar Empire had agreed to completely change their approach to meeting new species. Instead of trying to scare everyone into submission, they were now offering genuine friendship and cooperation. It had not been an easy transition. Many older Kethvar had spent their entire lives believing they were mighty warriors. Learning that they were actually more like helpful teachers had been quite a shock for some of them. But the younger Kethvar had embraced the change enthusiastically. They were tired of pretending to be something they were not. They wanted to explore the galaxy and make real friends, not just frightened subjects. "Sir," Dan Moore called from his science station, "the Zellans are responding to our message. They're asking why we're here and what we want from them." "Perfect," Jake said. "Put me through to them." The main screen showed the bridge of a Zellan ship. The Zellans were aquatic species that looked somewhat like large, intelligent dolphins. Their leader was floating in a tank of water, looking curious, but cautious. "Greetings," Jake said with a friendly smile. "I'm Captain Murphy of the Human Kethvar Alliance. We're explorers and we're hoping to make some new friends. We'd like to learn about your culture and share some of our own knowledge with you." The Zellan leader blinked in surprise. "You want to be friends? That's unusual. Most species that contact us want something from us." "Well, we'd certainly like to trade ideas and maybe some technology if you're interested," Jake admitted. "But mostly we're just curious about how you live and what you've learned about the universe." "And what about your Kethvar partners?" the Zellan asked suspiciously. "We have heard stories about them. They are supposed to be terrifying conquerors." Jake chuckled. "Would you like to meet one of them? I think you'll be surprised." A few minutes later, Zethkar entered the bridge. He was wearing a completely different outfit than the scary armor he used to favor. His new clothes were colorful and friendly-looking, decorated with artistic patterns instead of weapons and skulls. His skin lights were glowing in soft, pleasant colors. "Greetings, friends of the Zellan people," Zethkar said in a warm, natural voice. "I am Cultural Ambassador Zethkar of the Kethvar. We are very excited to meet you and learn about your fascinating civilization." The Zellan leader stared at him for a moment. "You're not what I expected." "I get that a lot these days," Zethkar replied with what might have been a smile. "We Kethvar used to have a very different approach to meeting new people. We've recently learned that friendship works much better than fear." "What changed your minds?" the Zellan asked. Zethkar's lights flickered with amusement. "We met the humans. They laughed at our scary act and then offered to help us find a better way." The conversation that followed was everything Jake had hoped for. The Zellans were brilliant engineers who had developed amazing underwater cities. The Kethvar shared their knowledge of advanced materials and energy systems. The humans contributed their expertise in communications and cultural exchange. By the end of the day, they had established a three-way friendship that would benefit all their species. Later, that evening, Jake found Zethkar in the ship's observation lounge looking out at the stars. "How are you feeling about the new approach?" Jake asked, sitting down beside his alien friend. "It is wonderful," Zethkar replied, his skin glowing with contentment. "Today, for the first time in my life, I saw other beings look at me with curiosity and interest instead of fear. The Zellans actually wanted to hear what I had to say. It's better than being scary, isn't it?" "Much better. Although I must admit I sometimes miss the dramatic flair of our old methods." Jake laughed. "Well, there's nothing wrong with a little drama, as long as you're not trying to terrorize people with it. You could still have fancy titles and colorful ceremonies. You just need to make them welcoming instead of threatening." "That is true," Zethkar mused. "Perhaps I could be Zethkar the Friendship Bringer, or Harvester of Good Times." "Harvester of Good Times?" Jake repeated, grinning. "I love it." Dr. Kate Adams joined them in the lounge carrying a tablet full of data. "The cultural exchange results are incredible," she reported. "The Zellans have already agreed to share their water purification technology with 3 Kethvar colonies that have been struggling with contaminated water supplies. And the Kethvar artistic techniques have given the Zellans new ideas for decorating their underwater cities," Zethkar added proudly. "See?" Jake said. "This is what happens when people work together instead of trying to intimidate each other. Everyone benefits." Amy Chen's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving a message from Kethvar Command. They want to know how the mission went." "Tell them it was a complete success," Jake replied. and asked them to send more friendship ambassadors. I think we're going to be very busy. As the UES Friendship traveled toward their next destination, the ship's computer logged another successful peaceful contact mission. In the 6 months since the new alliance had been formed, they had made friends with 12 different species. Not a single shot had been fired, and every encounter had resulted in mutual benefits for all involved. The old HFY Empire, built on fear and intimidation, had been completely transformed. In its place was a new kind of organization dedicated to exploration, friendship, and cooperation. Young HFY were signing up in record numbers to become cultural ambassadors instead of warriors. And it all started because a group of humans had done something that no other species in the galaxy had ever done. They had laughed at the scary aliens and then offered to help them become better. The galaxy was becoming a much friendlier place, one silly alien dance at a time. As Jake looked out at the stars, he couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem was not to fight it, but to laugh at it and then work together to find a better solution. The HFY had learned that being genuinely helpful was much more satisfying than just pretending to be scary. The humans had learned that even the most intimidating-looking aliens might just need a friend and some good advice. And the rest of the galaxy was learning that the universe was full of wonderful possibilities when different species chose cooperation over conflict. It was, everyone agreed, a much better way to explore the stars.